It's interesting. I was once having a conversation with a Jewish friend who had brought his best friend who was a Jesuit priest to come and hear this presentation that I was doing. And before I went on, he heard another speaker who was talking about Christmas. Because I don't talk about Christmas. It's really got nothing to do with me. But this other speaker was talking about it and saying how originally it was the birthday of Mithra. So this Jewish friend of mine who he doesn't know anything about Christmas, he asked the Jesuit, because this is the answer man. This guy is, Jesuits especially are extremely educated. So he asked the Jesuit, is it true that Christmas was originally a pagan holiday, the birthday of Mithra? And the Jesuit, without skipping a beat, says, yeah, of course it's true. That what the church does is it appropriates the ways of the pagans and Christianizes them and makes it a victory for Christianity. And I thought that was an incredible explanation. In other words, the facts of the history of Christmas, you can find it in the Catholic Encyclopedia.
That's right.
They're not in dispute. That's what I find so interesting about it. Hanukkah, I know a lot of people have this discussion. Is it pagan or is it not pagan? I'm not convinced. I don't see the evidence there. I see that there's some similarities to a certain fire festival, but it's disputable. Christmas, there's really no dispute.
No.
I mean, certainly if you ask historians or even the Jesuit priests or the Catholic Church, they believe that this was originally the birthday of Mithra, and they wanted to basically win over Constantine's army. Constantine wanted to win over his army, which was largely made up of Mithraists. So he compromised with them. He said, okay, you can keep worshiping Mithra, but just call him Jesus and worship, and we'll worship him on Sunday instead of Shabbat, and we'll even worship on his birthday. And everybody was happy, so to speak. In air quotes, everyone was happy because the Christians had Jesus and the Mithraists had their Sunday and their Christmas. And to this day, you see very similar things happening. I saw a documentary just the other day about the patron goddess of I think it was Venezuela, which is some Inca goddess who they continue to worship, except now she was raised as a child by the Virgin Mary, and I forget what her name is, Maria Luisa or something like that. And everyone knows that she was originally an Inca goddess, but now she's a Catholic saint. Now this is a story that a man told me in Kentucky. He was telling me about how for years he's been telling his son-in-law that Christmas has this pagan origin, it's related to Mithra, and his son-in-law would blow him off and say, "Oh, you conspiracy theorists, that's so silly. I mean, how can that be? We wouldn't be celebrating in the church if that was true." Well, now the son-in-law has gone to seminary, a well-known seminary in the south of the U.S., which is they call that the Bible Belt.
Sure.
And he calls up his father-in-law and he says, they taught us in seminary that what you said is true, but that Christmas has this pagan origin. But then they told us, don't tell your congregation, don't tell your flock, because if you do, you'll lose them. And it doesn't affect their salvation anyway, so they just don't need to know this. And I thought, are you kidding me? I read it in Ezekiel 34, and it talks about the evil shepherds that instead of grazing the sheep, they're grazing on the sheep. Instead of taking the sheep out into the pasture so they can eat the good food, they're turning the sheep into food themselves. And I mean that's what I heard from that. I mean it's the role of the shepherds to protect the flock, not to hide information from them. That's how I look at it. In a way, I have more respect for the Catholic, that Jesuit who said we've Christianized and appropriated the ways of the pagans, because at least he's being honest. If somebody wants to keep Christmas after they understand what it is, it's not my place. Maybe it's your place, but it's not my place to tell them they shouldn't do that. I think if somebody wants to keep Christmas, I think, well, it's a nice custom. That's between them and God. But I think they should at least know what the truth is. That's my position on that. But there's no question that paganism is forbidden in the Torah. But if people choose to be, to observe pagan things, that's their decision.